What is up guys, Randomonium here, and today we're going to be talking about Juggernauts. This video is a follow-up of my how to find your ideal playstyle, class, and subclass video, so if you haven't watched that one yet, I highly recommend it. In this video we're going to be covering Olaf, Shyvana, Udyr, and Volibear. All of their Juggernauts have been covered in other videos. Also, I want to give a very special thank you to all of the Juggernaut mains who helped me with this video. As you can see on the screen, I've had a lot of help. Some of the in-game footage you see in this video was provided to me by other YouTubers and streamers, so please check them out. I've left a link to all of their channels and streams in the video description below. Juggernauts are some of the most feared champions in League. They have very high base stats, they do massive amounts of damage, and they're extremely tanky. They excel in 1v1 fights and can even 1v2, 1v3, or 1v5 if played correctly. Most Juggernauts have a ton of sustain built into their kits, which allows them to survive in what seems like impossible situations. However, Juggernauts have much less mobility and crowd control than most other classes and virtually no utility. There are some Juggernauts with a potent movement speed boost and very strong forms of crowd control, but in general, Juggernauts are extremely vulnerable to kiting. They struggle against team comps with long ranges and crowd control because they can never close the distance against them. There are two types of Juggernauts, raid bosses and freight trains. Raid bosses are very immobile Juggernauts who can kill pretty much anything that comes within their reach. They are extremely tanky and can deal absurd amounts of damage, allowing them to take on multiple enemies with ease. However, they are extremely vulnerable to ranged champions that can kite them. Freight trains are more mobile Juggernauts who have movement speed boosts which allow them to rapidly close the distance on their enemies, and they often have ways to stick to their enemies while barraging them with attacks, spammable spells, or damage over time abilities. To compensate for this increased mobility, freight trains are either less tanky than raid bosses or do less damage than raid bosses. Special thanks to Dragonshay for doing a great job defining Juggernauts. I've linked his post in the video description below. Raid bosses are shown on top and freight trains are shown on the bottom. Within each type of Juggernaut, there are those who are more ability-based and those who are more attack-based. Ability-based champions are shown on the left and attack-based champions are shown on the right. Today we'll be focusing on the champions in the lower right-hand corner, the freight trains who rely on attacks. These are some of the fastest moving Juggernauts and can pretty much tear through anyone with their brutal, rapid attacks. Once on top of you, these Juggernauts are near impossible to get off, and they can be an absolute terror in the middle of a team fight. These Juggernauts are Volibear, Olaf, Udyr, and Shyvana. Olaf is most commonly played in top lane, while Shyvana, Udyr, and Volibear are most commonly played in the jungle. Olaf can also be played in the jungle, and Volibear and Udyr can also be played in top lane.
Leave nothing behind.
Olaf, the Berserker. Olaf is the very definition of a warrior, a being who is only truly alive in the midst of battle. Born and raised in the most inhospitable regions of the Freljord, Olaf's people were known for their love of battle. Among his tribe, the greatest curse was to grow old, frail, and forgotten. Even among these great warriors, Olaf quickly became a legend, something he was never hesitant to boast about. One night, his tribesmen grew tired of his bluster and dared him to read his omen to prove how great he would become and how glorious his death would be. Olaf took them up on their challenge, but instead of seeing a glorious death in battle, the omens told Olaf that he would die of old age with a quiet passing. Infuriated and embarrassed, Olaf left his tribe to prove the omen wrong, seeking out a legendary serpent that had slain thousands. When he found the beast, Olaf jumped into its maw with axes drawn, ready for the glorious death he so desperately wanted. Instead, the bloodlust took over, and once it faded, Olaf awoke to the carcass of the legendary worm all around him. Even though he had wished for death, his berserker fury had kept him alive. Not to be deterred, Olaf sought out other legendary monsters of the Freljord. One by one, each of these beasts fell, and the legend of Olaf grew. Within Olaf was an unquenchable fury, a spark that refused to die no matter how hard he tried. Frustrated, Olaf sought out the most ferocious tribe in the Freljord, the Winter's Claw. Ruled by Sejuani, the Winter's Claw was feared all throughout the Freljord. Seeking death, Olaf approached the clan alone and openly mocked them, challenging Sejuani and her clan to attack him. Amused, Sejuani sent a score of her men to slay the lone warrior. One by one, Olaf cut them down. Sejuani sent more men, and they all fell to Olaf's axes. Eventually, there was no warrior left between Sejuani and Olaf, and they entered into a battle so fierce that it shook the glaciers. Although deep in his berserker rage, Sejuani battled the unstoppable Olaf to a standstill, matching his every blow. As they stood deadlocked, Sejuani's stare broke through Olaf's berserker haze long enough to strike a truce. If Olaf pledged his axes to Sejuani, then Sejuani would find him a glorious death, and make sure his legend was sung for ages to come. It was a bargain that Olaf could not refuse. In game, Olaf plays very similar to his lore. Olaf is absolutely terrifying in combat, becoming stronger the more you damage him and being near impossible to run away from. At early levels, he is near unstoppable and has kill pressure anytime the lane is pushed to his side of the map. The Olaf of League doesn't like warm hugs. He likes having your warm blood drench his axe. A lot of Olaf's dueling power comes from his passive, Berserker Rage. This ability gives Olaf 1% bonus attack speed for every 1% of his maximum health he loses. This means that a low health Olaf can gain up to 2,500 gold worth of attack speed at level 1. To make matters worse, Olaf's W, Vicious Strikes, synergizes extremely well with his passive. This ability, when activated, grants Olaf up to 80% attack speed, up to 22% lifesteal, and increases his healing from all sources by up to 50%. This ability allows Olaf to turn fights extremely easily and heal extremely quickly, especially when he was on low health. Olaf is the master at baiting enemies into overextending when he's low health because he deals a scary amount of damage through his passive and he has enough sustain through his W to stay alive on a sliver of health. Another extremely important part about Olaf's W is it increases his healing from all sources, not just attacks. This means that you can use Olaf's W to heal more from potions, heal more from honey fruit, or even heal faster in the fountain. Olaf's Q, Undertow, is his real bread and butter ability though. This ability is on a fixed 7-second cooldown and can be thrown up to 1000 range. If he hits an enemy, they take physical damage and they're slowed up to 45% for up to 2.5 seconds. However, what makes his ability so fearsome is that after throwing the axe, it stays on the ground, and if Olaf picks up the axe, he reduces the cooldown of Undertow by 4.5 seconds. This means that if Olaf hits you with an Undertow and you try to run away, Olaf can keep chasing you down by picking up the axes he throws and throwing another axe. If you're accurate with your axes, this ability can keep enemies near permaslowed, forcing them to fight Olaf on his terms. One of the things that really separates a good Olaf from an amateur is that a good Olaf will throw his axes as short as possible while still hitting his enemy, giving Olaf less distance he needs to travel in order to pick up his next axe. Olaf's E, Reckless Swing, is another frequently misunderstood ability. This is a point-and-click ability that deals up to 250 true damage to the target, but costs Olaf up to 75 health. However, this health cost increases Olaf's attack speed through his passive. Furthermore, Olaf's cooldown on his Reckless Swing is reduced by 1 second every time he auto-attacks, further synergizing with his passive. Combined with his W, Olaf can negate a lot of the health costs and can use his Reckless Swing on a very low cooldown, especially if he has some cooldown reduction. However, in close fights, it's often better to save your E for the killing blow, since it's a good chunk of burst damage, and if you kill your target, the health cost of E is refunded. At this point, it's probably pretty obvious what Olaf's weaknesses are. First of all, he has no gap closers, so if he can't land his axes, he has no way of closing range to deal damage. Second, most of Olaf's strength is dependent upon him being able to continuously auto-attack to make use of his massive sustain, especially when he gets on low health. This makes him very susceptible to crowd control, which prevents him from attacking and allows enemies to burst Olaf before he can heal back up when he's on low health. This is where Olaf's ultimate comes in. When Olaf activates his ultimate, he becomes immune to all forms of crowd control for 6 seconds and gains up to 70% movement speed for 1 second. When combined with items like Righteous Glory, this ability guarantees that Olaf can close the distance on enemies. This makes Olaf kind of a wedge buster champion, charging carries with no way for tanks or supports to peel him off. When fed, Olaf becomes absolutely unstoppable when he's in his ultimate, and the only way you can guarantee your survival is to outrun your allies and hope that Olaf decides to kill them instead. While the crowd control immunity portion of Olaf's ultimate ultimately gets the most attention, it's also important to talk about the stats that Olaf's ultimate also gives. When not activated, Olaf gains up to 40 armor and 40 magic resist, worth up to 1,520 gold. When Olaf activates his ultimate, he trades his extra armor and magic resist for up to 80 AD, which is worth up to 2,800 gold. That said, it's not always advantageous to immediately activate his ultimate. Smart Olaf players will use the passive defensive stats he gains to reduce the damage of an enemy's combo, since players tend to use the most powerful abilities as fast as they can in a fight. Once the enemy has blown their load, Olaf can activate his ultimate to gain a massive amount of offensive stats and guarantee that his enemy has no way to escape or prevent Olaf's advance. Olaf benefits from long, drawn-out fights, so don't be too quick to pop your ultimate. Since it also cleanses all crowd control on you, it's often best to save your ultimate for once a CC lands, allowing you to tank as much damage as possible before going into Berserker mode. Olaf's true weakness is that he doesn't scale very well. Olaf is one of the most terrifying champions in the early game, but if he doesn't start snowballing, then he's going to struggle to be effective in late game team fights. The main reason for this is that Olaf gains a massive amount of stats from his abilities early, but these stats don't scale very well into the late game. Olaf's passive gives him the same amount of attack speed at level 1 as it does at level 18. Olaf's W gives him 40% attack speed and 14% lifesteal at rank 1, but that only increases by 10% attack speed and 2% lifesteal per rank. That said, if you're looking for a terrifying duelist who's near unstoppable when ahead, then Olaf is a great champion to pick up.
Tremble before the power of a dragon.
Shyvana, the half-dragon. Within the hearts of dragons are elemental runes, some of the most powerful sources of magic within Runeterra. When Shyvana was but an egg, a human mage attempted to extract Shyvana's runic magic from her. Scared off by Shyvana's mother before he could complete his work, the mage's magic unknowingly fused with Shyvana's draconic form. When the egg hatched, Shyvana emerged as a violet-skinned human with the power to change into a dragon at will, a half-dragon. Shyvana's mother, horrified by the hybrid abomination, immediately attempted to kill Shyvana. However, Shyvana's father protected her, fighting off her mother long enough for the two of them to escape. Over the years, Shyvana learned to control her draconic form from her father as they moved from place to place to escape her mother's vengeance. Shyvana's mother never stopped hunting her, and as Shyvana grew in power, her mother became able to sense her magic from afar, making it harder and harder for Shyvana to stay hidden. Eventually, Shyvana's mother found her and attacked Shyvana. Shyvana fought back but was no match for her, suffering many wounds. Hearing the battle, Shyvana's father rushed to her aid, allowing her to escape but sacrificing his life in the process. Grieving, Shyvana fled to a land her father told her of, a strange land that dampened magic called Demacia, a land where hopefully her magic would be suppressed enough that her mother couldn't track her. While hunting in this new land, Shyvana followed the scent of blood to find an injured warrior named Jarvan, who was near death. Shyvana's predatory instincts told her to finish him off, while Shyvana's human side reacted with compassion and empathy, realizing that Jarvan would die without her help. Though fearful that people would reject her due to her strange appearance, Shyvana carried Jarvan to the nearest town in an attempt to save his life. Surprisingly, the people did not recoil from Shyvana, but rather embraced her for her bravery and her selflessness, rallying around her and nursing Jarvan back to health. For the first time, Shyvana felt like she belonged, and though the magic-dampening lands of Demacia felt like a heavy weight on her shoulders, she finally felt like she was home. Shyvana lived in peace for many months as Jarvan healed, and a strong friendship blossomed between them. However, eventually Shyvana's mother found her, raging the countryside and the villages. Shyvana attempted to flee, knowing that her mother was after her, and that if she left Demacia, her mother would follow, potentially saving the Demacians from her mother's fiery breath. Mistaking Shyvana's actions for cowardice, Jarvan confronted her. Shyvana explained her heritage, explained that she was the reason that so many Demacians were dying at her mother's hands. Instead of hating her, Jarvan embraced her, swearing to fight by her side. She had saved his life, and so he would lay down his life to save her. Together, they ended up defeating Shyvana's mother, and Shyvana and Jarvan have been inseparable ever since. In-game, Shyvana is a hyper-scaling auto-attack based Juggernaut. She's incredibly weak in the early game, both in dueling and ganking potential, and tends to power farm until she gains some combat stats. Shyvana is also extremely good at sneaking early dragons, since her passive allows her to deal an additional 10% damage to them, and also grants her bonus armor and magic resist for each dragon she kills. Once Shyvana gets a few items under her belt, she becomes extremely hard to deal with. This is primarily due to her ultimate, Dragon's Descent. This ability causes Shyvana to dash unstoppably 850 units, knocking all enemies hit by her dash backwards and transforming her into a massive dragon. While in dragon form, her auto attack range increases by up to 205 units, her health increases by up to 350, and each of her abilities become massively more powerful. Shyvana's ultimate also doesn't have a set cooldown, something that no other champion has. Shyvana passively gains 1 to 2 fury per second while in human form, and also gains 2 fury each time she auto attacks. Once Shyvana stacks 100 fury, she unlocks her ultimate. This means that if Shyvana is auto-attacking a lot, she can pretty much always have her ultimate up for every major fight. How long Shyvana stays in dragon form is also variable. While in dragon form, Shyvana drains 5 fury per second. This means that, at a minimum, Shyvana can stay in dragon form for 20 seconds. However, each auto attack in dragon form still gives her 2 fury, so if Shyvana uses her ultimate wisely and is able to auto attack a lot in dragon form, then she can extend the duration of her ultimate to be much longer. The ability that Shyvana normally maxes first is her W, Burnout. This ability surrounds Shyvana in flames, dealing magic damage to all enemies around her every second. Additionally, her W gives her up to 50% bonus movement speed, but the movement speed does decay over the duration. Shyvana's W lasts for 3 seconds and is on a fixed 12-second cooldown, but Shyvana can extend the duration on her W by 1 second every time she auto-attacks, up to a maximum duration of 7 seconds. Additionally, each time Shyvana attacks while Burnout is activated, she deals 25% of Burnout's damage to all enemies around her. This allows Shyvana to do a massive amount of AoE damage, and is her only way to close distance prior to unlocking her ultimate at level 6. Furthermore, when Shyvana uses her W while in dragon form, Burnout has an increased area which deals damage. Shyvana's E, Flame Breath, unleashes a fireball that travels in a line, dealing magic damage to all those hit. Shyvana's E also marks the targets for 5 seconds, causing Shyvana's basic attacks against marked enemies to deal 2.5% of their maximum health. While in dragon form, Shyvana's E explodes when it hits a champion or reaches its max range, dealing initial magic damage and then magic damage every second that the target remains on the scorched earth. Targets hit by her E in dragon form or who walk over the scorched earth are also marked, just like when Shyvana uses her E in human form. This ability is typically maxed second on Shyvana. Shyvana's Q, Twin Bite, is a very important ability that synergizes extremely well with the rest of her kit. This ability is an auto-attack reset that causes Shyvana's next attack to strike twice in one swift movement, dealing bonus damage and applying on-hit effects twice. Furthermore, Shyvana's basic attacks reduce Twin Bite's cooldown by 0.5 seconds. In dragon form, Twin Bite damages all enemies in a cone in front of Shyvana, applying the damage and on-hit effects twice to all enemies hit. What is really important is how Shyvana's Twin Bite enhances her other abilities, since it counts as 2 auto attacks. This means that it can extend the duration of her W by 2 seconds, it can cause her to do 50% of her W's damage, and it deals 5% of the target's maximum health if she's already hit them with her E. Her Twin Bite also allows her to stack Fury faster. When Shyvana is in her dragon form is where things really get crazy though. Because her Twin Bite cleaves in dragon form and her auto attacks generate Fury when in dragon form, this means that Shyvana can greatly increase her ultimate duration by using her Twin Bite to hit multiple enemies. For example, if Shyvana hits 3 enemies with her Twin Bite, that allows her to gain 12 Fury, which increases the duration of her ultimate by over 2 seconds. This cleaving effect also causes her W and her E to do more damage as well. Keep in mind that when Shyvana's W is active, when she auto-attacks, she deals 25% of Burnout's damage to all enemies in an AoE. This means that if she uses Twin Bite to cleave multiple enemies, when her W is active, she can deal an additional 50% of Burnout's damage for each enemy hit to all enemies within range. This is what makes Shyvana so terrifying in the late game. She can ult over a wall into middle of an enemy team and deal massive amounts of AoE damage that destroys both squishy champions and tanks alike. And since Shyvana is an auto attack based champion, but her abilities deal a lot of magic damage, this makes it very hard to itemize effectively against her, especially since she deals percent maximum health damage with her E and Blood Razor. Contrary to popular belief, Shyvana actually deals more magic damage than physical damage, making her a decent choice if both your top laner and your mid laner choose AD champions and you don't feel comfortable playing a more traditional AP jungler. Shyvana is amazing in the late game, but she struggles early. She synergizes very well with pushing mid and bot lanes, since that allows her to take dragons early and often. Be careful playing Shyvana into junglers who are strong in the early game or who like to invade like Lee Sin or Kayn. Don't try to match early game junglers in ganks. Just focus on doing your best to neutralize them by warding a lot, tracking their movements so you can counter gank, counter jungling them if they gank the opposite side of the map to which you are on, and taking neutral objectives whenever you can.
Our rage is beyond your control.
Udyr, the Spirit Walker. Udyr is more than just a man. He is a being that lives between mortal and spirit realms. Blessed with the power of 4 primal elemental spirits, Udyr possesses the strength, toughness, and cunning of the greatest beasts of nature. As a child, Udyr was chosen to be the next Spirit Walker, the shamans who maintain the balance between the natural and spirit realms. While training for his lifelong duty, he was attacked by the Ice Witch Lysandra. His master, the current Spirit Walker, defended Udyr from Lysandra's attacks, but ultimately fell to Lysandra's magic. Racked by grief, Udyr gave in fully to the animal inside himself, and felt the full force of the spirit's primal nature surge within him. As he howled with fury, the entire Freljord howled with him. So great was his roar that it caused a massive avalanche, burying him and Lysandra under a mountain of snow and ice. Once Udyr finally clawed himself free, the Ice Witch was nowhere to be found. With no one to train him or comfort him in his grief, Udyr descended into madness. He became an animal, attacking anyone who came within scent of him. The Freljordians learned to steer clear of Udyr's forest, and for many years Udyr was alone. One day Udyr caught a scent on the wind, an intruder. With animalistic fury he attacked, but each of his strikes were effortlessly cast aside. For all of Udyr's strength and ferocity, he could not penetrate the defenses of the stranger. Fury gave way to exhaustion, and eventually Udyr's rage subsided long enough to converse with the stranger, the monk Lee Sin. Lee Sin had come seeking the Spirit Walker's guidance, but instead found a man who had lost his path. Lee Sin offered to take Udyr to Ionia, a place where he could heal and once again find harmony. Udyr accepted, and over the years he regained his humanity and his purpose. When Noxus attacked, Udyr came to defense of his adopted home, tearing through the Noxian ranks by the score. The Noxians learned to fear the wild. Once the Noxians had been rebuffed and peace returned, Udyr began to feel another battle stirring him from rest, the Freljord. The Ice Witch Lysandra was alive, her power growing every day. Udyr understood the true threat of the Ice Witch. She was the herald of a greater darkness that would soon envelop the land. Armed once again with his humanity and with the 4 great elemental spirits at his side, Udyr returned to the Freljord to avenge his master and bring balance and harmony back to the Freljord. Unlike most other champions, Udyr has no ultimate ability. Instead, Udyr has 4 stances that he can activate, each which gives him different passive and active bonuses. Additionally, each time Udyr uses one of his abilities, he gains 5 bonus movement speed and 10% bonus attack speed, stacking up to 3 times. Udyr's Q is Tiger Stance. Passively, this stance causes Udyr to deal up to 150 bonus damage with 180% AD scaling every 3 auto attacks. This bonus damage is dealt over 2 seconds, but if Udyr procs the bonus damage again within 2 seconds, then any remaining damage from the previous Tiger Strike is dealt instantaneously. When activated, Udyr immediately unleashes a Tiger Strike and gains up to 70% bonus attack speed for 5 seconds. Udyr's W is Turtle Stance. Passively, this stance causes Udyr to heal up to 5% of his maximum health every 3 auto attacks. When activated, Udyr's next attack immediately generates 3 stacks and shields him for up to 200 damage plus 50% of his AP. Udyr's E is Bear Stance. Passively, the stance causes Udyr's basic attacks to stun his target for 1 second, but the same target cannot be stunned more than once every 5 seconds. When activated, Udyr is ghosted and gains up to 35% bonus movement speed for up to 3 seconds. Udyr's R is Phoenix Stance. Passively, the stance causes Udyr to deal up to 200 magic damage plus 60% of his AP in a cone every 3 auto attacks. When activated, Udyr deals 200 magic damage plus 100% of his AP to all enemies around him and instantly generates 3 stacks of his Phoenix Stance. One of the great things about Udyr is that his abilities give him immense variety in his builds and runes. Udyr benefits from pretty much every single stat in the game, so there are dozens of builds and rune choices that work with him. His Tiger, Turtle, and Phoenix stances all scale with attack speed. His Tiger stance also scales with AD. His Turtle and Phoenix stances also scale with AP. His Turtle stance also scales with health. Udyr also benefits from movement speed items since he has no dashes or blinks, and his abilities are also very mana hungry, so he even benefits from mana items as well. All in all, Udyr is possibly the most versatile champion in League, and it's Udyr's versatility that is one of his greatest strengths. Good Udyrs will vary their runes and their builds to best complement their team and best counter the enemy team. One of the worst mistakes you can make when playing Udyr is being rigid in your rune choices or your build. In order to be successful with Udyr, you really need to embrace the wild. Animals adapt to their surroundings to survive, and so must you when you play Udyr. If you need to build tanky, build tanky. If you need to build damage, build damage. If you need to split push, itemize a split push. If you need a team fight, itemize a team fight. Udyr is really all about playing the macro game and thinking ahead of your opponent. Udyr's insane movement speed allows him to rotate to objectives faster than pretty much any other champion in the game. Great Udyr players are constantly moving and adapting, always keeping their opponents on the defensive so they can never strike back at your team. While I typically like to recommend runes and builds for each champion, I feel like I'd be betraying Udyr's nature as a champion to give you recommended runes and items. The truth is that it's all situational with Udyr. It depends on your team comp, it depends on the enemy's team comp, how fed you get in the early game, and how fed everyone else in the game is. Because of this, I highly recommend you check out statistical sites like op.gg or lolalytics.com for the most common runes and items on Udyr, and I highly recommend you check out the Udyr main subreddit if you're trying out Udyr for the first time. Udyr's greatest weakness is that he has no true gap closer. All Udyr can do is run at you, which makes him very susceptible to crowd control. All of Udyr's damage and tankiness is dependent on him being able to get auto attacks off, and if he can never get in range, then he can get cut down very easily without doing much of anything. When engaging with Udyr, try to find flanking opportunities when possible. You need to anticipate what your enemies can throw at you. A lot of what makes a great Udyr player great is being able to juke skill shots and orb walk. Udyr's greatest weakness can also be a strength though. While Udyr has no gap closer, he's one of the fastest running champions in the game, making him extremely good at baiting enemies and wasting their time. Good Udyrs are great at splitting enemy teams and sowing confusion in their ranks, employing guerrilla tactics to enrage the enemy and cause them to make emotional decisions rather than rational ones. In essence, Udyr brings out the animalistic tendencies in everyone and then beats them with experience.
Let the storm follow in my wake.
Volibear, the Thunder's Roar. Volibear is in a weird spot right now from a lore perspective. Under the old lore, he was a member of a bear-like people known as the Earth Sign. He was a shaman who was given the power of the storm by the spirits and was tasked with stopping the coming darkness of the Freljord. However, Ornn's lore hints of a very different Volibear. Ornn's lore states that Volibear is his brother, which would make Volibear a demigod. It is clear that Riot intends to rework Volibear's lore entirely, and perhaps even rework the champion, but for now the following paragraph is all we know about the new lore surrounding Volibear. The thunderous demigod known as the Thousand-Pierced Bear is the battle-hardened spirit of the Freljord. Thousands of years of constant and bitter wars fought in the coldest winters have hardened Volibear into a truly indomitable force, hurling bolts of lightning from the highest peaks. And when snowy tempests rage down, it can only mean that he is on the attack once more. Any who dare to face him may find themselves joining his fierce army of Ursine warriors, assuming they do not fall victim to his savage claws. When I first started making this video, Volibear was in a very bad place. He had one of the lowest win rates and one of the lowest play rates in the game, and it had been that way for a very long time. However, Riot gave Volibear some massive buffs in 8.4 that's brought him back into the meta and has returned the Thor Bear to his former glory. Volibear's passive, Chosen of the Storm, heals Volibear for 30% of his maximum health over 6 seconds once he drops below 30% maximum health. This gives Volibear insane dueling power in the early game since he basically has 30% more health than you think he does, and it also makes him extremely difficult to kill in the late game since in the late game Volibear frequently has over 3000 health, which means his passive will heal him for over 1000 health. Volibear's W, Frenzy, is his bread and butter ability and what gives him his terrifying dueling power. Passively, Volibear's W gives him 20% attack speed each time he attacks a target, stacking up to 3 times. Once Volibear attacks 3 times, he can cast Frenzy, causing him to bite the target for up to 260 damage, plus 15% of Volibear's bonus health. Furthermore, this ability has its damage increased by up to 100% based on how much health the enemy is missing, making it extremely powerful in dueling situation, especially when combined with his ultimate. Volibear's W also has its cooldown reduced by 50% when used on a minion or monster, allowing you to easily last hit minions or jungle monsters. Volibear's Q, Rolling Thunder, is Volibear's only form of gap closer. When activated, Volibear runs on all fours and gains a bonus movement speed for 4 seconds, up to 25% at max rank. However, if Volibear is running towards an enemy champion, that movement speed increases to 60% at max rank. A 60% movement speed boost is massive, especially when combined with Ghost or Righteous Glory, and allows Volibear to run down nearly any champion in the game. Additionally, as part of the changes with 8.4, Volibear's bonus movement speed falls off gradually if he changes direction to juke skill shots, making it much harder to kite Volibear or lock him down with crowd control. When playing Volibear, people typically activate his Q way too early. Hold off on using your Q as long as you can to ensure that you can reach your target before the 4 seconds elapses. If Volibear attacks a target when Rolling Thunder is active, he deals bonus damage and throws the enemy over his head. This is an incredibly powerful form of crowd control that can guarantee a kill when used properly, or completely screw your team if used improperly. If you throw your opponent away from their tower, or you throw a carry into your team, then you will be the hero. If you throw the enemy tank into your backline, or if you throw the enemy carry away from your team, then you will get an endless stream of well-deserved question mark pings. There's not a particularly high skill cap when playing Volibear, but flinging someone in the right direction is something you cannot afford to mess up. Volibear's E, Majestic Roar, deals AoE magic damage, slows all targets around Volibear for 3 seconds, knocks enemies slightly backwards, and causes all minions and monsters to flee in terror for 3 seconds. Additionally, enemies who are dashing or airborne when Majestic Roar is cast are also dealt additional magic damage, making it synergize extremely well with Rolling Thunder. Additionally, the fear on minions can be extremely useful in early duels, allowing Volibear's minions to continue attacking while the enemy minions flee in terror. Volibear's ultimate, Thundering Claws, gives Volibear a massive spike in damage, especially in team fights. When activated, Volibear deals magic damage to all enemies in an area around him, and for 12 seconds afterwards, each of his attacks deal additional magic damage that can bounce to up to 7 nearby enemies. Basically, it gives Volibear a more powerful static Shiv passive that can be used on each of his attacks for 12 seconds. This ability, combined with his E, causes Volibear to deal an almost equal amount of magic damage as physical damage, making it very hard for enemies to itemize against him. Volibear is a very strong duelist, especially at early levels, thanks to his passive and his W. He is very strong against melee champions, but because his Q is on a relatively long cooldown and the bonus movement speed only lasts for 4 seconds, he struggles against ranged champions and champions with lots of crowd control. Like most other freight train juggernauts, Volibear is best when flanking or when the enemy team doesn't have a turret to retreat to. Volibear synergizes very well with tanky movement speed items like Righteous Glory or Dead Man's Plate, and also benefits from items like Warmogs or Spirit Visage due to his passive. While the Ghost Summoner spell does synergize very well with Volibear, Flash is overwhelmingly picked on him since the Flash Q combo can single-handedly win a team fight if he knocks a carry out of position. Because Volibear's E also slightly knocks back enemies, and his Q knocks enemies airborne, Volibear synergizes extremely well with Aftershock, especially since Aftershock's damage and Volibear's W damage both scale off of maximum health. Predator and Grasp of the Undying are sometimes picked up, but in general, Aftershock is picked up much more often. Late game, Volibear builds basically full tank, but can still do scary amounts of damage with his combo. If a Volibear gets on top of you, then it can be extremely terrifying. That said, Volibear does struggle to gap close against enemy teams, especially ones with lots of crowd control. If Volibear can't close the distance, then he becomes quite useless, so flanking and denying vision becomes extremely important to be successful with Volibear. All told, Volibear is a very well-rounded juggernaut with a strong combination of insane tankiness, good damage, and decent crowd control and mobility, who can go for early kills but also scale decently well into the late game. And that's all the champions we're going to be covering with this video. Let me know in the comments what you love or hate about these juggernauts and which champions or subclasses you want me to cover next. If you enjoyed this video, especially with the new in-game footage, please hit that like button. This video took a lot of work on my part, and I also had a lot of help from other Juggernaut mains. As you can see on the screen, I had 16 Juggernaut mains help me with this video. A few of these people also have YouTube channels or Twitch streams, and I've linked all of them in the video description below. Please check them out and show your support of me by supporting them as well. Also, if you're interested in any of these Juggernauts, please check out the subreddits for each of these champions. There are a ton of helpful people there who can answer all of your questions far better than I can. I know this video has been a long time coming, and I appreciate all of you being patient and continuing to support me. If you'd like to see me come out with these videos quicker, I could really use some help with in-game clips. The next class we're going to cover is going to be Divers, so I'm actively looking for any clips involving any champion from the Diver class. If you have a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream and you want your clips to be featured in my videos, please let me know by leaving a comment or sending me a private message. If you're interested in helping out in future videos, or if you're curious what videos I'm planning on doing next, please check out our Discord. There are a ton of helpful people there, and it's the best place to ask me questions, provide suggestions for the channel, discuss esports, or even find a couple people to play a game with. Link to our Discord is in the video description below. And if you made it this far in the video and you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of my videos. I hope you all have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium, signing off.